Um, our today guest in OPOstories from the NBA, it's Kenny Anderson,
Hmm.
coach, legend, one of my favorite point guards from the 90s. So it's really big pleasure for me to got the opportunity to talk with you. Mm,
Yeah.
Kenny, what was your first memory connected with basketball? Do you remember this?
Oh, my first memory was when my sister Danielle. I lived in Jamaica, Southside Queens, New York. Used to take me to the park, IS8 Park.
Mhm.
Um, at about 6 years old, she used to take me to the park. I used to throw the ball up, and then I used to see all the guys running full courts. And I always wanted to play basketball. So she would always take me, she would babysit me, take me to the park. That was her, that was her due, that's what she did. And she introduced me to the game of basketball that I truly fell in love with. My sister Danielle.
Mm-hmm. When you mentioned that you fell in love with the basketball, I remember that in one of the commentary, Kenny the Jet under Smith
Yeah,
told the story that many times he woke up at night
yeah,
in
yeah,
Lefark City, and there were kids playing on the court, and one of
yeah,
them, of course, was you. And how did you find energy for these activities? And I guess that your neighbors really like this
yeah.
for night games.
So Kenny Smith is like a mentor to me. Vincent Smith, his brother, mentored both of us. And Kenny Smith went to Archbishop Malloy High School. I went to Archbishop Malloy High School because I saw all his growth. And he used to see me. I was about 4 or 5 years younger than him. He used to see me in Lefark City, the park where we grew up at. He looked down. His window, his terrace is right above. And he looked down and he'll see me out there all times of the day. I was just on the basketball court, just playing. We come from two different families. He was raised with his father and mother. I was just raised with my mother, and she was out, trying to, get the bills paid, in our home and everything. So I was able to go out, late, and maybe go into trouble, but I chose to go, to the basketball courts, and it rescued me, and for my life, and I thank God that it did.
Mhm. Who was your favorite player when you were a kid and youth?
Favorite player? What? Probably Kenny Smith. I really didn't know. Kenny Smith was my favorite player growing up because I seen him and I could touch him.
Mhm.
But I like Tiny Archibald, who played, with the Celtics. He's from New York. My 4 point guards that I love truly got my game from was Rod Strickland, Kenny Smith, Pearl Washington, who passed away, rest in peace, and Mark Jackson. Those are guys before me that really did it. And I watched them guys grow up and handle the ball, and not only handle the ball, but how they handle the media. I would just, look at those guys and try to take bits and pieces from their games to emulate. And I was able to do that.
You mentioned about the players who are the New York legends for sure.
Yeah.
But, when we look about your time as a basketball player from the high school, you were a 4-time parade All-American, a McDonald's or America, all-time state record for scoring in New York, and you were predicted to be number one in the NBA draft. And how did you live with this pressure and expectation?
Well, I always, look back at my growth, where I came from. So pressure wasn't nothing for where I grew up. You know what I'm saying? So I just played, man, and did the work, and did what was asked of me. I already thought, if I did what's asked of me, worked extremely hard, shut my mouth, everything would work out. And that's what I did. And I learned that from my high school, playing for Jack Curran, my high school coach, who I love him, man. He passed away many years ago, and I think that's where I get a lot of my growth from, my high school days. You know, understanding what's real and what's not, what's fake. And I had to, and growing up in New York helped a great deal also, because you saw a lot of things, and that's besides basketball. You saw just life in general.
You went to Georgia Tech, and with future NBA players like Dennis Scott and Brian Oliver, you reached Final Four in 1990. You scored almost triple-double, and was one of the best games in your basketball career, being in the Final Four.
Yeah, that was awesome. Making it the Final Four my first year. I had told Dennis Scott we was gonna make the Final Four my first year. Leading up to it, he didn't believe me, but we went to the Final Four. But playing at Georgia Tech was a dream come true for me. It was just everything worked out for me. With playing with Brian Oliver, Dennis Scott, myself, Coach Crimmins. I love my staff. Kevin Cantwell was his assistant coach. He was great. Sherman Dillard is now at Iowa. He's doing a great job. It was just a great, fun environment for me to be in, so I can learn not only the game but just in life. And being down in Atlanta, seeing all the different people, it was just great. It was just a great feel for me, and I loved it.
As I mentioned, you grew up in New York. Became New legend. And how emotional for you was to be picked by New Jersey? To New York.
Oh, it was awesome when I got picked by New Jersey. It was like 45 minutes from my home. It was just great, man. Then it was great playing with Derrick Coleman, Syracuse, one of Syracuse best big men, and Dražen Petrović. It was all set for me. It was just going, like my mentor Vincent Smith said, it was just going according to plan. My life was going according to plan. Everything was working out for me, man. I was just blessed. All my moves that I made in life was working out for me, and I just thank God for that.
And how do you remember Dražen Petrović? Because when I talked with Dino Radja, former Boston Celtics player, he told me that Dražen, the best to describe him was that the sky was the limit. And from your perspective as a teammate, how do you remember him?
Yeah, skies was the limits for him. He was just an awesome pro, not just playing wise, but the person, the kind of guy he was. He wanted to he did well over there where he lived overseas, but he wanted to come over to the pros and make a name for himself, and he did that. And it was just so sad when he passed, and just a tough. I try to remember him every day. Every day I get up, I try to, I post something about him, and in that nature, you know what I'm saying? So he was just a great teammate, real quiet. You didn't really get to know him, much, but he was a good guy. He was a great guy.
And your second season, 92-93, was much better for you. Yours increased, and you were third in vote award. And, what did change the most during that season?
I didn't change much. It's just that the coaching situation was, I laid my first year. I didn't come to training camp, all training camp, because I was just trying to, sign a deal. And the coach took it out on me and sat me in. And the second year he got fired. And then Chuck Daly came in and gave me the ball, and boom, I blew up after that. But it was just, NBA. That's just it's a business, and you got to be ready for it. And I wasn't at first, and I started getting, aware of what was going on, and I just worked extremely hard on my game, and boom, I became an all-star with the New Jersey Nets. It was just a great accomplishment. Myself, Derrick Coleman, made the all-star team. Probably could have had Dražen Petrović there. I think, no, he was, I don't know if he passed away then. I'm not sure, but we could have maybe had 3 guys play an all-star. We just had a great team. a great team chemistry. It was just awesome feeling.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned about Chuck Daly, and from your perspective, how important Chuck Daly was for you and your NBA career?
He was very important, and before he passed, I would call him. He lived in Florida, so I would call him and just talk to him in general. He was a great man, a great coach, and he let me do my thing, but he also gave me the structure of, this is your team. You have to be a captain. You have to lead these guys, and they have to believe in you. And that's what my team did. It was just an awesome feeling, and he kind of taught me about the NBA game. It was great. Chuck Daly was there. He was my head coach, but then Rick Carlisle was the assistant, with New Jersey Nets, and he became the Dallas Maverick coach, Indiana Pacers, and so on. But it seemed like I've always had a great path to being successful if I wanted it.
Mm-hmm. And with Derrick Coleman, you mentioned you were selected to the NBA All-Star game, both to the starting five. And how do you remember your cooperation with Derrick Coleman?
Derrick Coleman he's probably the best player I ever played with in my entire life. Derrick Coleman was just he was 6'9" power forward, but he could just do it all. Could dribble, could shoot, pass. He was a great player. And then after the lead, we started getting to know each other better, and he's a great man. And I'm just so thrilled and happy that I got the opportunity to play with a player of his caliber.
Mm-hmm. In the 95-96 season, after 31 games, you were traded to Charlotte Hornets.
Yeah.
And from fans' perspective, it's usually just a news that this guy is traded to that team. And how you could describe how it looks from player perspective, from your perspective?
Oh, bottom line, is money. At that time, I wanted to, I wanted to be paid, handsomely, like everybody else was being paid. And I wasn't sure if they not only paid, but to bring the guys in that was going to make us be competitive. So, I didn't think they were. So I left and went to the Charlotte Hornets for half a year. I was just playing to see, all the teams was watching me. So I had to play well. And I think I played extremely well. I think I averaged 15 points, 7 assists. And then Muggsy Bogues at Charlotte was injured. So it was my job. It was great. Played with Robert Parrish, the Chief, Larry Johnson, Glenn Rice, Dale Curry. We just had a great shooting team. It was great, man. I had a great time, and I wanted to sign back with Charlotte, but the owner just didn't want to pay me my right money, so I just left.
Mm-hmm. So in the 96 summer, you decided to go to the Portland Trail Blazers. Yeah. Why Portland?
Yeah. Portland came at me, man. It was great there. I loved it, Portland. I loved it. It came with the right money, and everything was set up. We had a very good team. We lost to Kobe's first year's team, Kobe Bryant and Shaquille O'Neal Lakers. We was in the 4th seed, and I think they was in 2nd or 1st, one or the other. But Portland, that's one of my favorite organizations. They really handled me well. It really did a great job with me, and I have nothing but great things to say about Portland. It was just awesome to play with the organization like that. Portland Trail Blazers was awesome.
Yeah, they've got really great roster. You've got you as a point guard, Isaiah Ryder, Rasheed Wallace, rest in peace, Cliff Robinson, also Arvydas Sabonis. And how do you remember your cooperation with Arvydas? He was a guy with great ability to passing.
Arvydas was one of the greatest big men that ever played the game. He's in the Olympics, and I loved him because after I retired, I came over and played with his team over in Zacharias. Zacharias. I went over there and played for him. So, it was awesome. He got me over there. I played for a year and a half, too, and it was just a great feeling. My mother had passed away, so I came over there and played for him. It was just an awesome feeling.
And how you remember the moment when you realized that you were traded to Toronto for Damon Stoudemire? Did you like this move?
I liked it, but I didn't because it was a tax. Back then, it was only tax. I was just trying to run from the taxes. The team wasn't the problem, and people don't really understand that. It was the taxes. So I was like, wow, why would you, do that? The taxes. So I just waited. I waited. I didn't want to go there because of the taxes. That's it. Toronto's a great town, great city, great players, everything. It was just a move of the taxes, and I just waited, and boom, Boston came up. It was awesome situation for me playing for the Boston Celtics.
And how do you remember? Because in Boston Celtics you play with two very talented young players, future Hall of Fame Paul Pierce, All-Star Antoine Walker. How to find what was your role in the team? Do you felt that you are a mentor or still want to be a leader at this team?
I was like a mentor a little bit, because I had played a long time in the league, and Paul Pierce was coming. He was coming into his own. Antoine Walker is already in his own bag, but it was great playing with Boston Celtics. I want to thank Rick Pitino who brought me over there. Rick Pitino brought me in, and Jim O'Brien, finished it off, by going to the Eastern Conference Finals. We lost to New Jersey Nets, but we was very close. It was very close, but I just love, the fans of Boston, and I was able to really perform, one of the best years I had in my life, playing with the Celtics.
You mentioned about this at Eastern Conference Finals. You played against Jason Kidd.
Yeah.
But, did Jason was in the top 3 the toughest guards you play against?
Yeah, he was one of them. He was very skilled at running a team, passing, rebounding. That was his thing. Scoring, but he was able to get those guys the ball in unique situations. He was a great point guard, but we fell into it was a back and forth game, and they just took over. He did extremely well. Vince Carter, Jason, they had Jefferson, and then they had the big guy. I forget his name, but he was awesome. He was awesome. It just happened that way. But it was great playing in the Eastern Conference Finals. But it was kind of, weird because I've started my career with the Nets, and now I'm with the Celtics, and now the Nets are in the championship. So who's weird?
No. When you look at your whole career, which team you feel that was your town, your place, your home?
Those are 3 teams, New Jersey Nets, Boston Celtics, and Portland Trail Blazers. Those are 3 teams, I give most love to, and played 10 years strong. 10 years, played 14 years in the NBA, but 10 years strong, minutes strong. 30 plus, 35 plus minutes, 10 years strong. And then 4 years just running around. Played with the Seattle Supersonics. Played with the Indiana Pacers, the Atlanta Hawks, the Clippers. Those teams I was just trying to keep it going. But I played 10 years strong. It was just awesome.
When you look from the current situation at your NBA career, are you satisfied, or do you find a place that you could do something in a different way?
I'm not. Yeah, I'm satisfied. But I always think back now, all the championships guys are winning. I always think about championship. Like if I had one championship in the NBA, it would be great. But I played 14 years in the NBA, played college, played high school. I ain't nothing more I could do, but I always think about that every now and then. If I would have got a ring, but, you do's and don'ts, man, but I think about it, I would have put the cherry on the top if I would have been able to get the ring. It would have put the cherry on the top of my career, but my career is a blessing, man. I just, you know, like my documentary says, I say, basketball has been easy. Life is hard. You know, that's just been my whole, you know, way of thinking, you know, and that's just the way it's been. But I've been getting it together.
You mentioned about the documentary, Mr. Chibbs.
Yeah.
Jill Campbell's documentary shows Kenny Anderson as a player and more as a human, being life with ups and downs.
Yeah.
How difficult was to open and show your life to the audience, to the other people?
It was hard at first, but then, you know, I was able to, you know, get it out, you know, in time. And then that's the best way to do it, you know, to get out and be able to speak about some of your mishaps in life. And if you could do that, you arrived. I really believe that, and get help, you know, for whatever you're going through in life. But if nobody knows, nobody's going to help, you know what I mean? So I'm just trying to become a good man, my kids and my wife, and just learn a lot, you know, especially, you know, playing 14 years in NBA and 2 years of college, you know, high school All-American in New York City. You learn a lot, and you learn a lot from different people, and you see a lot of the actions that they do, and you pick and choose. Like, no, I don't want to live like that, you know. So, you know, that's just how I am at this point in my life. I'm really happy. You know, I'm coaching at Fish University. It's an NAIA school in Nashville. That I'm growing. That I'm growing. You know, going in my third year, and you know, I gotta make changes and growing. You see certain things, you can move it and move and learn. It's a blessing, man. It's a blessing. I played all the games of basketball, but now I'm playing the game of life, which is great.
Yeah, I really like your Twitter account.
The
followers, and it's really positive that to see there is a lot of love, family, friendship. So it's really nice.
That's what I plan on doing for the rest of my life. Why hate? Why hate each other? It's no need for that. You know, I dealt with that. But, you know, when my mother passed and everything, I handle things a lot different now. So we all must stay positive in this crazy life that we're in. All of us stay positive. Give strength back to others, because you don't know how much that will do for that one person you see that you might help go on and do something positive in life, instead of going out robbing and shooting and hurting people. For what? It doesn't make sense. So I've always tried to give back, and I can give back through Twitter because everybody follows. So I'm always trying to think a way of giving back. And that's the main thing. I had a great life, so now it's time to give back to others.
You've got situations that you are walking on the street. Okay, in the COVID-19 time, it may be more difficult, but do you have those kind of situations that you are walking on the street or are in the shop and somebody came to you and say, Kenny, thank you very much for you as an example that dreams comes true, that it's really good to fight and you give us hope. Do you got this kind of situation?
Yeah, a lot. I get it a lot in different cities and all that, but I've been, you know, with the COVID situation. I've been here where I live in Nashville. But, you know, all you can do is just be yourself. And and I tell everybody, be yourself. But most of all, give love off and give care, you know, and that's what I think. Everybody that come, you know, to me say, hey, Kenny, I saw this, man. Thank you. It means a lot. Boom. Thank you, you know, and just move on. But there's always a positive. It's always a positive and a negative. You can see it always. And we gotta do a better job of getting it. Even with me, I've had some down days, but when I leave my bedroom, I clear up. Boom, let's get it. You know what I'm saying?
Another day.
When I leave my bedroom, I clear up. Let's go. You know, you got to do it. You got to do it.
And how could you describe Ken Anderson as a coach?
Well, I'm learning. As coach, I'm learning. You know, I played a great game, but coaching is, it's different, man. It's much different. I'm learning day by day. I love it. I love giving back to my young players. What I really realize is my era is different from this era, and you got to just live it. You know what I'm saying? And you got to realize that. So I'm like, wow, I never thought like some of these young men think. I just worked. I shut my mouth. I just worked that. Then when now it's always talk back. I'm not just, you just got to deal with it. You got to deal with it the best that you know. You can't always get rid of a player because he's talking. Because he's talking too much. You just got to explain to him, what's going on. And they respect me because I played in the NBA, so I have to understand that, and for them, I have to understand. Hey, I played the game, I know the game, but that's fine. But what about the schoolwork? How you doing academically? How you doing socially? I gotta get those guys working hand in hand, with life, because I'm at a small school, NAIA school, FIS. How many pros will I have? Not many, not none, probably. Who knows? But they're all gonna, have a family one day, and you gotta know how to. And you're gonna have to have a job. How you work, how you talk to people, how you get across to people, and that's the main thing that I'm trying to coach these guys about, and I'm trying to coach them about life. See, for me, basketball, we can go in the gym, do all type of stuff to get. That's easy. That's easy. But the other things, and they're all my kids, man. My team, they're all my kids, and I love it.
Yeah, you've got some kind of talkative player. Maybe in the future he will be next Gary Payton.
Yeah, who knows? You never know. You never know. But you got to be talk. You got to talk. You got to talk it right if you're going to talk it. So they're just talk all crazy. You can't do that.
And Kenny, if you could create a top 5 of the players, the best players, teammates you play with, who will be on this list?
Oh, wow, that's great. Raphael Addison, he went to Syracuse. He played with me in New Jersey and Charlotte. He was an all right player. He didn't get that much play. But he's up top. He's top. Raphael Addison. He's one of my guys. I talk to him often, and he's doing extremely well. Raphael Addison is top. He's a great guy. I would put Derrick Coleman. He's in there. But the two, Dennis Scott and Brian Oliver, those are the two guys in my life that I stay in touch with often, about coaching, about their families, about, we just talk about, realistic, life threatening, what we're doing in society today.
You could say hello to Dennis Scott because the Orlando Magic fan. I still remember him from the 94-95 season and NBA Finals.
yeah, he's great. He's great. He's working for the NBA now. It's awesome. Brian Oliver is working. He played with the Sixers for 3-4 years. He's up now. He's back at home. He's working engineering. He worked at an engineering company. You know what I'm saying? He's just they're great people to have in your corner. Derrick Coleman is a great guy. Raphael Addison is a great human being, just great people. You know what I'm saying? So those are guys that really, and then everybody else is great. I talk to Larry Johnson from time to time. There's just great people. Larry Johnson from the Charlotte. He went number 1 in the draft, and I went number 2 in the 1991 draft. So you can't beat it. It was awesome, though. It was awesome.
And you playing against each other in Final Four as well.
Yeah, Final Four, yeah. So, Paul Pierce, great guy, Antoine, all the pros that I played with, really great human beings, man.
Kenny, it was my last question. It was a pleasure, and I'm really happy that you find the time for OPOstories from the NBA. It was good to talk about your NBA career and also about your life, about your attitude, positive attitude. So thank you very much. I hope that you enjoyed this day and weekend.
I love it.
And let's stay in touch on the Twitter account.
Yeah, let's do it, man. Let's do it. Thanks a lot,
okay,
man.
thank you very much. Have a nice day. Goodbye.
I'm sorry for the mishandles we had, but we got it done.
But we did it. The game was completed, so that's the point. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thanks, my man.